that external force telling me that like men and women should be like biologically together or whatever, like I feel like that's just so unrelatable to how I truly feel in the inside. I guess for me, my story starts at birth. I can't really think about where it really starts. I think it starts in the feelings of shame, that I felt growing up, the feelings of like never fitting in, the feelings of wanting to be part of like, just like the feelings of wanting to express myself in a way that wasn't available because I did grow up in a really conservative, like immigrant household. I guess that's where it all starts. I really did come out high school, I think, is when I started gravitating towards a group of like queer or lesbian identifying kids who like felt exactly the same way I felt. And I think I remember that being the first time where I finally felt where I can be myself without that shame. From there, I got into the girls' rock camp, Orange County, and then Los Angeles, and I think that really shaped my life. In terms of being queer, that shaped, like, it gave me a place where I could just be myself.
I grew up in a kind of a Christian home, like going to church off and on. I always would consider myself a Christian, and but I remember too, like really young, being attracted to girls and trying to figure out like where does that fit with this. And then at 15 is when I first came out to my friends, when I first had a girlfriend. And then at 19 I met a woman who I got engaged to later, and we raised her 2 kids together, and we're as much a family that I'd ever had, and then whenever we broke up, I was like really sad, but I knew for sure, like you couldn't have told me otherwise. I'm going to marry a woman. We're going to raise probably her kids, not mine, together. And this is my fit, is to be this kind of a provider type. And then a few months later, I got invited to a Bible study. And I was still calling myself a Christian, like in name, but wasn't going to church or anything. But I went because I was like, well, if I'm a Christian, like I have no good reason to say no, so okay, I'll go. And I started learning about God, like really about Him for the first time. And I realized that like my feelings were dictating everything for me, and that didn't always go so well, and I can see that now. And so one of the, I don't know, like 2.5 weeks maybe into the study, I was at home and just thinking on that, and I Googled the verses on homosexuality. I looked it up and I came across 1 Corinthians 6, 9-11, and that's the one that's like, do not be deceived, neither and then it lists a bunch of sinful lifestyles you could be in. Sexually immoral, idolaters, drunkards, those who practice homosexuality, and then some more. Won't inherit the kingdom of God. And then the last verse says, and such were some of you. And that's the night that I understood like how sexuality, how what I was doing fit in with the Bible. And I realized that I was my own standard of truth at that point. And so anyway, that's how I went from living like I did for so long to now where I realized like, okay, this is what He says. I'd much rather look to a creator, perfect God, than to myself and my feelings for truth. And that's when He changed my heart to where I wanted that more than I wanted all the other things and all the other security I found. I had a deeper security and I had a stronger love.
I relate to the part of like trying to find answers externally, like, when you sat down and started, looking. Because I think that drive for us to search, like a lot of our parents, adults, family don't think about that, where they kind of, okay, here, do your thing. And, I think they forget that we're curious about ourselves and the world, especially at that age. And I completely relate looking. And, sometimes that path might take us to like, looking in the craziest places, and sometimes it might help it lead us to the best places.
Right.
For me, I think that's why I fell into activism, so like I can help provide a safe space for, people to find.
I understand about feeling shame and not knowing where to go with that. I felt that when I was really, really young, before I told anybody how I felt towards girls, when I knew like I'm not feeling the same as my friends are whenever we're doing these things or we're spending time together. And it was hard. It was hard to find a place. I'm thankful that the Lord has me here now. But there was a time when I was definitely searching for peace, and yeah, I felt a ton of shame.
My sexuality defines me.
Like, I wouldn't say it's a driving force of how I exist every single day, but I would say it is part of my identity, and it's something I don't think about, but I do think about when I feel unsafe in a place, when I feel like I'm being judged, But for the most part, I think nowadays, like, especially, I can just like be myself. And if that means my sexuality defines me, where I can just like exist and breathe and like have a life and say on the phone, oh yeah, me and my wife, and the person isn't like on the other end like, wait, what, a wife? Like, to me, like, if that means my sexuality defines me, because I have to, in that moment, like, I feel the shame bug come in, and I'm like, no, tossing that aside. Yeah, my wife. That's the defining part.
Yeah, as a Christian, I've got to say that God defines, so God defines me, and that would mean he defines my sexuality too. So, I mean, these things like our desires, they're important to us, of course, but yeah, I think that there's a danger in them encompassing everything about us. I wouldn't say it defines a person. I don't think it should define a person.
Men and women were designed to be together.
So I have a standard to look to for this, so I would say yes. We see in Genesis 2 that God said that man shouldn't be alone, and he made a helper suitable for him, which was a woman. So because I agree with God, I believe that he doesn't make mistakes. Our feelings can lead us to feeling all types of things, but I have to agree, God knows more than I do.
I feel that external force telling me that like men and women should be like biologically together or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like that's just so unrelatable to how I truly feel in the inside, that like God wouldn't let me, wouldn't like, it's not like I feel desire or like sex drive all the time, but I just feel like myself, and I feel like that it just doesn't make sense in my head.
I'm thankful for a biblical worldview because it explains why I can feel like I feel, and it not mean that like God wants me to be miserable, because I always thought that like, if you want me to be with a guy, you must really not like me very much, because that doesn't make any sense based on what I'm feeling right now. But Christianity makes sense of feeling desires that are not good for us according to God, and then having a way out of them.
Yeah, so if you don't mind me asking, so the desire, did that dwindle, or?
It's kind of been like, it just kind of depends on the season.
Yeah.
Like marriage helped a lot of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it's still hard.
I have received hate because of my position on sexuality.
I'd say definitely, but for me, it was because I was in the closet for so long. Yeah. I think like I felt the self-hate more than I felt the external hate. Right. And by the time I came out, while I felt the hate towards, my mom, I also know that it was from love. Right. So I don't feel the hate from that. I feel the sadness. Yeah. I can't say I feel the hate. And, by the time I did come out, I did have, thank God, like a supportive community. Right. So the hate, my biggest enemy was myself, for sure. The self-hate, like, drowned me. Killed me, drowned me, brought me back up again to keep fighting. And I think that was my biggest battle for sure.
I experienced a lot of hate from people that profess to be Christians, that and most of them were like living in other forms of sin. They were living with their boyfriends or their girlfriends, but they didn't understand what I felt, and so they were extra mean to me. So I felt that for sure.
I've seen people, and I've been around people who have had the hate and the death threats. I think that's what keeps me going and trying to be proud and vocal and carry gratitude and in my heart, because I want to be strong for the people I love. Right. And while I haven't gotten that, and I'm sorry to hear that's happened to you too.
Sexual orientation can be changed.
So I take issue with the term sexual orientation. A lot of people have said to me, this is like civil rights. Like, slavery was obviously wrong. Racism is obviously wrong. Believing this is the same thing. And I think that's a danger, because they're not the same. Now, if by sexual orientation we mean like the desires of our heart, like our attractions or what we do, I do think that those can be changed.
So sexual orientation, yeah, I think for me it is just ingrained. Like, I don't even know what to talk about, because it's like, it's just kind of like, and I think all of it too is also stems from my privilege of just, having a place where I could crawl into, be it my own music or my community. And I remember the struggle when I read about like folks in other worlds dying because of it, and or even just kids in other families or adults in other families who struggle and have been shunned. And that's when, to me, it hits with like in terms of like civil rights, or in terms of just like so much work still needs to be done.
Do you think it's wise to allow our feelings, only our feelings as a culture, to change like all our definitions and how we do everything?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't also identify sexual orientation just to like my feelings.
Okay.
I think, sure, it's my feelings, but like, it's like, I mean, this is a big conversation, but like race, like I'm Filipino and like I feel Filipino, but I'm also just like Filipino. Like, I think like that is also sexual orientation. I wouldn't say society should just be driven by feelings, but I think if folks can live and feel safe, like that would be rad.
Homosexuality is a sin.
I believe that the Bible, because it's from God, is more true than anything. So anything I could feel at any point in my life could feel. So yes, and I'll just add, God is not out to like take away all our joy and all the things that are important to us. God gave us a design for sex and for marriage, and it's a good design because He says it is, and because He knows us more than we know us, because He made us. So I used to believe and was wrong, thinking, why is it your business? Hypothetical God, if this is the case, why does it matter? But yeah, He's not like this cosmic killjoy just trying to, whatever. He knows what's good, He knows what's right, and He says that His design is what's right. So because it goes against Him, that's what makes it sin first.
So for me, I guess like, because just foundationally, like I believe in a God, that just created me, and I do when I see women, I feel something, but it's not like, it's just, I feel like it's like chemical, non-desirable, it's just part of who I am. And I remember feeling that, and again, just like feeling that anger and that bounce around in my head, and then just coming to terms with like, the God again, foundationally, I think I feel just like there's no mistake, and it that feeling and that, not even just feeling, but this identity of this part of myself, it enlivens me, and I don't, I'm not enlivened by it and then like running around like killing people or what. Yeah, I feel like I'm enlivened by it, and I'm going back into the world and being the best person I can be.
Love means accepting others for who they are.
Yeah, I 100% believe that. I 100% try to live by that.
Scripture says that God is love. Scripture says that Jesus told us to love our neighbor, and he also told us to go into the world and tell everyone what he commanded. So it can't be not loving to tell people what God said, and that would include things regarding sexuality. So, because he can't contradict himself. So God is love, and this is how we love. We tell people the truth, and we warn them, even when most of the time it's not received well.
All romantic relationships should be celebrated as long as there is consent.
I think the reason celebration's a thing is because it's been, oppressed societally, socially, and within ourselves. So I think that's why celebration and pride exists, is because, when you've had to hide a part of yourself, sometimes just going out and saying, this is me, and I love myself, and I love you, that gives us reason to feel okay in our skin.
Again, I see the danger in that, in saying that all consensual relationships should be celebrated. Firstly, God gives us what he wants for relationships and for marriage and for sex, and tells us that the things outside of that are sin, are not good for us, and don't reflect him. But also just practically, that can vary so much too, in that if we move from God's standard, then we're deciding what does consent mean? What does age of the ability to consent mean? Because even that's, some cultures, that's not always been the same thing.
I think having gone through the hardship I've gone through, the inner hardship I've gone through for finding my identity as a gay woman, and the fear and fighting the fear and owning the fear and I think coming to terms with it and using it as a strength, I feel like it brings me to just go and be the best and do the best. And I think a big driving source for what's given me this power is my community. I think having a community and a safe space is a core, regardless of what you believe and what you do, just having a safe space where you can be yourself is a core, foundation for being happy.
What I would want to leave you with is to consider that I do believe that your feelings are the main driving source of these things. Good feelings, things that you want that are not bad. You want people to feel safe. You want people to be heard. I do too. But there's just a lot of room there for error. And I believe that God is real. You say that you do too. I would want you to consider that you have a soul and that it is going to be here eternally. And you acknowledge that there's right and wrong, so you have a standard somewhere of there's definitely good and bad, but I would encourage you not to look just to yourself to find out what that is, because you may feel totally right doing something that's wrong, and the Creator would know more than me or you, and I believe that you'll meet him, and that's why Jesus came, so that we can have these desires that we're born with, that you don't choose, but that so we could be born again and live lives that honor him and that are also full of so much joy.
That's the wrap.